Well, all is not well for old Museveni with his oil. You know, when you're there and you're thinking like, let me keep this thing for the next drought that is coming. You know, like that money you kept in savings and saying that when things really are so bad in my dry days, this is when I'll take this money out and, put it to use. When the donors refuse to give me money, I will play with my oil and I will get, you know, some amount of money here and there in one way or the other. Now, it couldn't have been worse from 70. We told him these things that you're always saying, this is your oil, my oil, my oil, my oil. I'm working for my family and my friends, whatever. That's what he has always been saying. But now, one bank after the other, they are withdrawing out of the pipeline. So where is Museveni going to get his money to finance the pipeline? 1,443 kilometers from Hoima in western Uganda to Tanga port. Now, for that question, I think Museveni is going to struggle as much to find money. You see, with dictatorships, without money they cannot operate. That is the driving fuel. That's the driving force. In dictatorships in any country, if you're fighting a dictatorship, look for where the money comes from, especially with countries in Africa that are not sufficient, that are not whose economies are not sufficient, or who rely so much on donor aid and things of that sort, and who rely more on resources. So the same applies to Uganda, that our dictatorships over here for the past 35 years has been enabled by money, has been enabled by donor money, as well as Museveni betting on our resources and things of that sort. Anyway, the story comes in the East African, saying that East African oil pipelines financing blues as lenders desert 3.5 billion project. Now, recently, of course, this is President Suruhu of Tanzania, when he had visited Uganda to make the final investment decision to sign and officiate the construction of the pipeline from Uganda through Tanzania to Tanga port and export the oil out there. And unfortunately, in this entire venture, the Chinese don't look to be as interested as well, and it's only left with the French under Total as well as Museveni. Now, all is not well in Total SE sponsored East African crude oil, as one by one European lenders are walking away from requests to finance the 3.5 billion project, leaving it in financing blues barely 3 weeks after its launch. Last week, newspapers Les Echos reported that three French banks, BNP Paribas, Societe Generale, and Credit Agricole, which have previously bankrolled Total's oil and gas projects, had opted not to provide financing for ECOP. Now, Milan-based UniCredit, one of the targeted lenders for ECOP, confirmed to the East African that its policies bar it from financing projects that pose environmental risks. Quote, we confirm that UniCredit has stringent policies in place to prevent the bank from financing deals that present environmental risks and are in any way in violation of human rights. In violation of human rights. Oh man, that is really good. Said Tulik Tulas, global head of media coverage at UniCredit. The import of this development is unsettling for local and international companies that are already lining up for bids for tenders and contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars in the project's construction phase, expected to start later this year. Total, the lead investor in the pipeline, has not issued a statement to respond, or responded to our request for comment. When completed, for the 1,443 kilometer East African oil pipeline will be the world's longest heated pipeline, running from Hoima to western Uganda to Tanga port in Tanzania. According to Total Chief Executive Patrick Puyen, The pipeline will transport 230,000 barrels of oil per day at peak production. The pipeline traverses sensitive ecological areas, and because of this, activists term it as an environmental risk that will produce 34.4 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions per year. The latest setback piles more misery on Total, which is desperate to raise 2.5 billion in debt financing for ECOP. In February, Switzerland Credit Suisse and UK's Barclays plc deserted the project. Credit Suisse is not considering participating in the ECOP project, Yannick Otto, the lender's spokesperson, told the East African via email in March. It is understood that some of the European, Asian, and American banks that were initially lined up as potential financiers for the project are waiting for independent studies of ECOP to make a decision. Now, if you hear such a statement that they are waiting for independent studies, that is as good as saying that we are not interested in financing it. I mean, what studies are there to make? Okay. Our position is no comment, as mentioned in the article from Les Echos, said Jean-Baptiste Frovel, the Society Journal Global Head of Media Relations, in an emailed media response. American lender Morgan Stanley, also targeted to provide funding to ECOP, would also not be drawn into the project's financing. Thanks for your email. We decline to comment, says Mercedes Goldman, the media relations associate at Morgan Stanley. Stanbic Bank and Uganda's affiliate, Standard Bank and its Uganda affiliate, Stanbic, are some of the financial advisors for ECOP, which is expected to raise 2.5 billion in debt, while the remainder of the project outlay is to be raised through equity from the shareholders. The ECOP shareholders are Total 62%, Uganda and Tanzania 15%, each and held through the country's oil companies, and China National Oil Offshore Corporation 8%. Stanbic's chief executive Andrew Ko told the East African that the project's financing is a long process and that at this stage the advisors are still putting together a framework. It's early days. We haven't reached the financing stage, she said. People are just getting ahead of themselves with the talk of which bank is in and or has pulled out. She added, there are independent studies going on, and only when we have findings from those studies shall we move to the actual phase of financing. In response to the March 1st open letter by the activists to the project's financial advisors and 25 lenders, Stanbic Bank Group said it will not compromise on environmental, social, and governance standards that ECOP is expected to follow. We support responsible investment and rigorously follow international standards and the best practice on assessing and managing our environmental, social, and governance risks. We are acutely aware of the environmental and social impacts and continue to undertake our internal due diligence process with support of an independent consultant who will issue a comprehensive environmental and social report. The findings from this report will inform our approach and level of involvement in the project, the financial advisor said. Japanese bank Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation and Industrial and Commercial Bank of China are the other financial advisors. ECOP was launched last year. It was launched on the 11th of April during the oil summit between Museveni and Samia Suluhu of Tanzania, and Total Chairman and Chief Executive Patrick Puyen at State House Entebbe. Despite the excitement, at the launch, state-owned entities holding a stake in the project, Uganda National Oil Company and Tanzanian Petrol Development Corporation, are yet to find $130 million to pay for their 15% each as equity in ECOP. There you are. So, like we have been telling you on this program, that you see there's this saying that says that to dictators, that if you refuse to get out of power, or if you refuse to leave power, you will be forced out of power. Now, technically here, Museveni is being forced out of power, and he doesn't even understand who is fighting or who is doing things against him. This might not even have Bobi Wine involved in it. But these are people who are tired of Museveni's machinations and tricks that he has been playing on the international community. Now, I'm very happy that sections of the international community are waking up, especially the banks, realizing that Museveni is a gross human rights violator. He has degraded the environment, cutting down trees poaching, ivory trade, and so many other things. So now, given that he has been banking on the East African, whatever, he has been banking on the oil, all of a sudden no one is willing to finance his so-called pipeline because the pipeline is going to create a lot of carbon dioxide and thus affecting the environment. Even that aside, the people who have been evicted from their land, the pipeline is going to pass through national parks, game parks, and all this kind of thing. And Museveni didn't have any consideration of all those issues. Now, what is interesting to me in this aspect is that I really don't understand why the Total actually went full force into this entire deal. Because if you look at this entire deal, the Chinese seem to be a bit laid back. They're not so much interested. That's why they are having something like 8% that they have to raise to finance the pipeline. And the French have the majority, and whereas Uganda and Tanzania have 15% in the pipeline. Now that is really interesting because I don't know how they're going to transport the oil. Maybe they will use trucks because without the money you cannot finance it. And Museveni has to look for over $130 million. The donors have refused to give him money and all that kind of stuff. Now, those of Museveni's supporters, because Museveni has been saying, initially he said that, we shall start drilling oil in 2016. Sorry, 2015. The next year was the election. Then he said, we shall start drilling oil in 2020. The next year was the election, 2021. Now they are talking about drilling the oil in 2026 after the elections. Is it 2027, 2025, I think, before the elections? So there is something that is not right in this entire deal. So do you think Uganda will be able to drill the oil or not? Well, what I think basically is Total might pull out of this entire investment. It might look elsewhere and sell its operations to another party. Might either sell it to Sinok, but Sinok doesn't look to be interested. And then maybe Sinok might come in and buy it at a bargain, and they use those Exim Bank guys, and then they finance the pipeline, because it looks like Sinok is the only oil company on the apparently that is operating in Uganda that can fully that has people who can actually give it money to finance this pipeline. That is the Chinese. Now, if that happens, by the Total pulling out of the deal, they will have to sell off their operations to a certain company, whatever, maybe Sinok or Shell or what, and someone else will come and bear the burden or take on the burden. Because look here, all banks are refusing to give Total money. Even the people who gave Total money in the very first place are now pulling out, saying, no, it's too much. Now, two things can either save Museveni. One is the French president Emmanuel Macron. He might come to his rescue and maybe try to talk to some French banks or try to talk to some lenders globally and internationally, to vouch for Museveni. But Museveni is not someone you can vouch for because, number one, his record is really, really, really that bad. And the other factor that is going to be hard for Macron to vouch for Museveni is because that he is facing another election soon. As a matter of fact, it is said that he's most likely to lose it. And if he loses that election, then it means a new administration is coming in Paris, and they will have to see. Because even these companies, the likes of Total, if they don't have government backing, their government backing, it's hard for them to do business outside the continent. Because at times, they rely on their governments to negotiate suitable deals on behalf of their companies. Because in the end, it is the French that will really benefit from the project. But then we see, that is why I told you that the situation in Congo is very interesting. Of recent, Uganda built a barracks, I think it was early last year or this year. They built a barracks around that area, the border of Uganda and Congo, and saying that it is there to keep an eye out on the ADF rebels. Now, if it is to be believed that Macron and Museveni had a conversation about the pipeline, And if it is to be believed that, you know, if it is to materialize that Tshisekedi called upon Macron to come and intervene in North Kivu again to sort out the ADF ISIS rebels. Now, if it is all that to be believed, what it means is that, like I've told you in the previous episodes, that Museveni is likely to provide Ugandan soldiers to go and die in the Congo while fighting ISIS, so that it could limit the number of French troops that would be deployed in the region. And then in return, Museveni can negotiate with Tshisekedi, as well as, sorry, Macron can negotiate with Macron can find means on how to pay for the pipeline, or link Museveni up with financiers who will pay for the pipeline, and in return have his intervention in Congo. And on the other hand, Macron can also help him to sort out this case that is happening in the International Criminal Court of Justice, where Uganda is being told to pay a hefty amount of money. And Macron can also intervene in that matter, because Tshisekedi needs Macron to come and intervene. That's why he went to ask for help. And Macron understands that Congo does not have a sufficient army to respond to the insurgency in North Kivu and these regions. So Macron would only look around the region and see who he can work with. So they have that link with Total and the pipeline. The link is there between him and Museveni. So that's the only lifeline that Museveni has. Now, if the lifeline breaks and Macron is kicked out of power before they can have a financer that can back them, what that leads to is the Total operations are likely to be sold off, just like it happened with Heritage Oil, as well as Tallow, and Total will be another casualty to leave the Ugandan operation. Now, that will either be left to Sinok, or it will be left to a new player who would come into the region to drill the oil. But of course, globally, the oil is facing very big challenges, and with the emergence of electric cars and all this kind of thing, any person who, people are now rethinking on how they engage with oil and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the news for Museveni and his cabal of individuals who are, that's the news for Museveni and his people, that if you don't want to leave power, you will be forced out of power. Situations and circumstances like this will always and always force you out of power, by either crook or by either hook or crook. So that is what is happening here right now. Thank you very much for listening. Please don't forget to like, share the video, subscribe, comment, and go through our other videos that we keep on bringing you on this platform. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.